We are taking all of the guests at Swell. We are breaking them down, what they are going to talk about, possibly announce, and where that leads us. In part one, we connected the dots between the governments, trillion-dollar banks, and the biggest asset managers in the world, all converging around Ripple and XRP. But here's the thing, because that was just the setup. What comes next feels like the execution phase. I mean, we're talking the exchanges that control liquidity, the banks that control the money flow, and the regulators who write the rules, all showing up at the same place, at the same time, under the same agenda. If part one showed the players assembling, part two is where the switch gets flipped. So buckle up, because what these next speakers that I'm going to reveal to you could point to the old financial system and the rise of something entirely new. Let's pick up right where we left off with the crypto funds on the front line. We're going to start with Hunter Horsley. He's a CEO of Bitwise Asset Management. Bitwise has quietly become the institutional bridge between traditional finance and crypto. They already manage spot ETFs for Bitcoin and Ethereum. But you know what? XRP has always been off the table until now. That's right. Picture this. Hunter, he announces the world's first tokenized multi-asset fund using the XRP ledger's infrastructure for settlement. Instead of clearing trades through legacy systems, funds move over on the XRP ledger, making them instant, transparent, and programmable. That's not just efficiency, folks. That is control. And whoever controls the rails, right? They will control the future of capital flow. Let that sink in. Bitwise could position themselves as the first mover in a post-Swift world, one that runs on XRP and liquidity. But if Bitwise brings the product, who brings them to the people? Well, that's simple, because that's where Nicola White, the vice president of institutional crypto for Robinhood, that's where they enter the room. Now, Robinhood has already onboarded millions of retail traders, but behind the scenes, their institutional arm, it is gearing up for a blockchain-based payments overhaul. Now, what if Nicola White announces that Robinhood isn't integrating RippleNet, that it's going to integrate RippleNet for liquidity and into it for its settlement layer? That now would mean that XRP could become the invisible engine moving cash between counterparties instantly, 24/7. But here's where it gets deeper. Robinhood's partnership with market makers could enable them to quietly act as liquidity nodes for banks using XRP rails. You'll never see XRP on the front end, but it'll power every single transaction behind the scenes. That's how the system flips without anyone noticing. Same way email works. We know we send an email, but we don't care what's going on behind the scenes. That's how XRP would work. You send money, you just know it gets there in seconds, and then it costs you barely anything. That's the power of it. And speaking of stealth moves, because this is going to bring us to JPMorgan. That's right, Scott Lucas, who is head of markets for digital assets over at JPMorgan. Now, this is the biggest bank in America. Their presence at Ripple event, I mean, that's massive. That says enough right there. Publicly, we know they have the JPMorgan coin. Privately, they're studying how every ledger works, including the XRP ledger. Now imagine that Scott announces that JPMorgan will integrate an interoperable settlement between Onyx, which is their internal blockchain, and the XRP ledger, connecting both private and public networks for global liquidity. That would make XRP the bridge asset between the institutional blockchains, the glue holding the new system together. Let's get a little tinfoil hat now. Maybe, just maybe, Ripple and JPMorgan, they do share multiple former executives, right? Including ties through the Digital Pound and Project Guardian innovations. I think the writing's on the wall here. If the banks are in, well, someone has to rate the risk, don't they? We need someone to rate the risk. That is where Moody's steps in, everyone. Where are they? Rory, my man Rory. Now, Moody's, they don't move markets, right? That's not what their job's to do. Their job is to define them. Imagine Calgary, we'll call him Rory, unveiling a new digital asset risk framework and naming XRP as one of the compliant settlement grade ledgers. That's not hype. That is what we call reclassification. The moment that you get credit agencies like Moody's validating the XRP ledger as a low-risk infrastructure, insurance firms, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, they can finally legally allocate to it. This would be your regulatory domino that everyone has been waiting for. And if this happens, the institutions already lined up in part one, they will move instantly. The stage is set for the next piece. The asset custodians who handle those funds, like State Street, you know State Street's going to be there too, right? Sam Sam Tenkent, we'll call him Sam. He's managing director and head of digital strategy for State Street. State Street is your third largest asset manager on earth. They're all about tokenized funds, and Sam runs their digital strategy division. Expect him to reveal State Street Digital Connect, which is a tokenized investment platform linking directly into RippleNet for real-time settlements. Think about it. ETFs, mutual funds, hedge funds, redemptions, all moving through the XRP ledger's liquidity engine. We are talking about trillions of daily settlement executed on a chain that runs on XRP. Once State Street plugs in, every major custodian will follow. And Ripple's reach, it goes global, because the next player is Asia's biggest digital asset bank. You know who we're talking about? We're talking about DBS. This is Singapore's crown jewel. They already have a live digital asset platform for tokenized assets. Evie, I think it's Evie. We'll go with Evie. She could announce the creation of the Asia-Pacific RippleNet corridor, connecting Singapore, Japan, Hong Kong, and Australia, all through XRP-based settlement rails. This would effectively make XRP the bridge currency for the Eastern financial sphere. Think of it as the Asian mirror to Swift, but blockchain native. This is how you get true East-West interoperability. And if Asia and the US are both plugged in, well, Europe, they can't stay far behind. And someone from Brussels, well, they just happen to be in the lineup. And who are we talking about? My man, Bill Kyler. He's showing up as Swell, and he is a giant political signal. He is a member of the European Parliament. Expect him to talk about the MiCA 2.0 framework, the next evolution of Europe's digital asset regulations. Now, what if he confirms that the XRP ledger meets all compliance criteria for an EU-wide settlement and tokenization service? That would now mean that every European bank could legally use Ripple's infrastructure the moment the directive goes live. Remember, Christine Lagarde was talking about pushing up their rollout and texting phase to 2027. They're going to need a settlement asset for that, or an interoperable asset, right? Now, if all this plays out, the EU would effectively hand Ripple a regulatory monopoly. Quietly, Europe could be positioning XRP as a neutral settlement layer, the backbone for a digital euro network, which is being rolled out in 2027, which is about 15 months away. And to make that work safely, well, we're going to need the regulators on the ground having to play along, which brings us to New York. That's right. We're talking John Millican. Where's my man John? I know he's in here, right there. He's Deputy Superintendent for Limited Purpose Trust for the New York Department of Financial Services. New York DFS writes the rules for institutional crypto in America. If John uses Swell to announce a new trust charter pathway for XRP-based settlement providers, that is Ripple's ultimate green light. He could hint that the XRP ledger has passed the department's due diligence standards for both custody and payments, making it compliant under the US law. That is the last barrier that we need removed. From the White House to Wall Street, from Singapore to Brussels, regulatory approval from the NYDFS seals the loop. Once this hits, the system is fully connected. And then, right when you think it's all finance, a new player steps in, and guess where he's from? Brandon Franz, the real estate investor. So why end with a real estate investor, you're probably asking? Well, I'm going to tell you why. Because this is where the real world assets meet the blockchain. Brandon Franz could announce a Ripple-powered property tokenization project. Imagine fractional ownership of global real estate instantly transferable and settled in XRP. That is the final frontier of tokenization, moving land, property, and tangible assets onto the same rails that the banks use. Real estate tokenization would unlock trillions in dormant capital, And guess what ledger could handle the compliance, the speed, and the scalability for that? Exactly. The XRP ledger could. This is how the new economy becomes fully digitized, from your savings accounts all the way to skyscrapers. Now, throughout the first two parts of this episode, we went over 18 speakers. Obviously, we left out the ones directly from Ripple. We covered the ones that were actually attending the event from these outside, governments, regulators, banks, asset managers, exchanges, and even real estate investors. Every single one plays a role in a financial system that is slowly being replaced by a blockchain-based infrastructure, where Ripple might be at the core. If you still think XRP is, well, just another coin, you're missing the bigger picture here. This isn't about price, this is about control. And the institutions aren't coming. The institutions are already here. Swell 2025, it could be remembered as the event where the new financial order quietly went live. So the only question is, when they flip the switch, will you already be positioned, or will you still be watching from the sidelines? Drop your thoughts below, smash that like button, folks, and make sure you join my free newsletter. Link is down below. Get ready for Swell, November 4th and 5th.